Welcome back, everyone, to the Bank Customer Experience Podcast. I'm joined by a friend of the podcast, Erin Cohee, who's the VP of User Experience and Business Development at OneUnited Bank. Great to have you on today, Erin.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Brad.
No problem. So, we are talking today about a very important topic. AI is top of mind for banks. We've had a lot of different discussions around it on this very podcast. We're talking a little bit more generally about how maybe AI can improve money management tools for customers. Because that's a big thing that a lot of bank customers are looking for, right? They want to look for how's this bank going to help me more smartly manage my money? But with that being said, I wanted to start with a more general question, not necessarily AI related. There's a lot of financial stressors out there that customers are dealing with between tariffs, rising costs, and all that stuff. But from your experience, what are some of the big financial stressors that you're seeing your consumers face today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I think the United States has a pretty large class stratification that we're all really familiar with. We're all familiar with that concept of the 1%, or the haves and have-nots of society, right? Um, and what we historically saw in the U.S. Is that there were different things that were sort of dividing us as a society, and really even pre-U.S. going back to ancient times, there were all different types of divisors within society, whether those be race or religion or geography, all these things that determine who was a have and who was a have not. In today's society, the real biggest determinant of which category you fall into really comes down to financial literacy and how much financial know how one has to manage the resources that they have access to. And it's not a surprise that in the United States, we actually don't teach financial literacy. So K through 12, the average American, they learn a bunch of wonderful things. I learned all about, the biology of leaves, and I learned how to do all types of really cool, exciting chemistry experiments. And I'm grateful for all of that sort of diverse knowledge. But some of the things I don't know about. I'll ask you, Brad. But when's the last time you solved a chemistry problem in your line of work?
No, I haven't solved any chemistry problems. If you show me like a picture of those old models of like how you balance the chemical equation, I'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that, but haven't used it.
Exactly, right. So we're all many of us are sitting here in a situation where we've had to piece it together ourselves. We haven't had an expert
Mhm.
to really inform us about how to manage our finances. Some of us are fortunate enough to learn it in our homes. But whether your family has resources or not, a lot of families, they may have resources, but it's sort of a taboo topic that they don't want to discuss with their families when it comes to money. So one of the biggest challenges that Americans are facing are not getting that financial literacy in school. And that's really where technology steps in to be able to solve some of those gaps. Currently, some of us have access to wealth management and individuals, experts who can take all of our finances and pull them from everywhere and figure out, okay, here's the best next step on what you should do. But typically, you need tens and tens of thousands of dollars to get access to those resources. So, artificial intelligence is really democratizing financial literacy and making sure that it gets into the hands of every single American, making sure that we get opportunities for all.
Right. I'm really glad you mentioned that because, like you said, it's often not available unless you have those resources to be able to hire on that people, or if your family is even able or willing to discuss it. Because, like you said, it's not really something that you learn in school or even necessarily in college unless you're taking a financial, minded degree. So I'm curious because a lot of times, at least from me talking to people, people are a little hesitant to go to their bank to talk with them about how do I improve my finances. So how have traditional banks been addressing these concerns of that lack of financial literacy, in your opinion?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it used to be that you had to go into bank buildings that historically have been so beautiful. They've got this incredible
Hmm.
architecture. You go into this very stately manner almost, and you sort of go in and you've got to, maybe bring a few pieces of paper and you've got to go talk to somebody in a suit who seems like they've got all the knowledge in the world. And then you've got to ask them your most embarrassing, most vulnerable questions, right? So that used to even if you did have access to those types of resources and that type of information from an expert, it could be a relatively intimidating experience as well. So that's where a lot of people prefer nowadays. You want to have both options. You want to have an individual who you can speak to and that's important as well. But you also want to have something maybe a bit more digital that you can just speak to and tell all your deepest, darkest financial secrets, so to speak. So, that concept of a financial advisor and someone to organize your finances has long existed. But another one of the challenges that we see is that banks will typically help you with what's going on in between their walls, right? They'll help you maybe with
Right.
the accounts that you have with them, but 99% of Americans have multiple financial institutions that they're
Right.
working with. You probably have, your checking and savings account in one place. You've probably got a 401k somewhere else, an auto loan, a mortgage. You've got three different credit cards with three different credit cards, one with a retailer and one with, a financial institution. So, that information can be very disparate and can be difficult for even some great financial advisors or certain great financial institutions to help to give people advice on. So another key piece is really like data aggregation and helping people to first collect all of their financial information in a single place so that they can get very accurate guidance around what's the next best step for them to take.
Right. That's a very excellent point because all this data is spread throughout, and people are going to be intimidated walking into, as you mentioned, like that very stately, fancy building, talking to someone in a suit about their finances and admitting, some embarrassing things. So that's a very good point. But so before AI came onto the scene, because obviously that's everywhere now, what sort of money management tools were available? And you don't have to like give specifics, but were maybe some of their shortcomings in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first shortcoming of traditional banks, like I mentioned, was just that they typically are only, if they have any type of tool, they're probably only advising you on what's within their doors. You've got other folks who will ask you to go and sort of collect your financial information. They may be charging you really high fees to help you with that management. Then, when the apps came on the scene, these fintechs who are providing great structured financial advice without having to necessarily go to the traditional banks. That's the latest iteration that we're currently at today. Some of the great things about those tools are, again, the data aggregation and bringing the data together. And then typically they're going to provide you with some great charts to help you to see, okay, this is how your finances are fluctuating. And at times, if you've got experience reading sort of charts and graphs and things, that's something you do at school or your day to day in your job, then you can really sort of make sense of it. But often, sort of, even when you have all the information in one place, it's sort of like it can be a bit overwhelming. Okay, what do I do with
Right.
it and what do I do about it? So then the next key piece comes in, and that's really being able to provide those really bite sized insights to tell
Mhm.
people in a hyper personalized and real time fashion, this is your next best financial move these funds over here, or hey, your bill, your energy bill was 20% higher this month. Reach out to the energy company. Here's their phone number and information. You can call them right now and
Right.
see what's going on, or maybe just put on a sweater. If it's a little chilly where you are, put on a sweater this month. Save a few bucks. So really providing that real time information. That was the next step beyond sort of the traditional money management of just charts and graphs, is those sort of real-time relevant insights. And then the next really exciting way to move this to really help people to understand and grapple with their financial information is conversational banking. That's where generative AI comes in, and is really, really helpful to people because you can have a full-blown back and forth conversation with your financial wellness AI assistant, where they can really get into the details and ask anything that you ask and answer anything that you questions that you might have. So really being able to go back and forth with that agent is not something that historically existed. Typically, it was sort of a one-way conversation with money management tools simply providing you with the information, but it was challenging to have that sort of back and forth.
Right. I really like your point about the insights. It's really not just about providing the charts because you can look at that charts all day long, but like, okay, how do I take these charts and turn in insights to improve my financial well-being? So you mentioned a little bit about generative AI starting to make some inroads in this way. How is AI changing money management in your experience?
Absolutely. It's the real sort of next level future of banking. It's kind of funny because digital banking has not really been around for that long. It's been so
No,
like
it hasn't.
it's so natural to us now. But I think ATMs were first invented in it was like the '90s, and that was really the first
I
venture.
believe it was the '60s, but they didn't gain much traction until the '90s. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The ability to sort of go with a debit card and be able to sort of like take out funds and do that sort of
Hmm.
remote banking outside of an actual banking institution. That's relatively new. So sort of the rapid growth in this space has been absolutely incredible. But artificial intelligence, you know, we even if it's wonderful if we start teaching financial literacy in school, and that's something that I'm very focused on, and is making sure that it's mandatory for in order to graduate from high school, that you have to take at least one financial management class. That should be a prerequisite for every American. But as soon as you get out of school, right? Okay, the books are available, and there's YouTube, and there's everything. There's all this information out there. There's a world of information out there, right? And that's wonderful. But we don't have time to sit there and read through pages and pages or watch hours and hours of videos in order to see like what's actually specifically relevant to me in this exact second, right? And what's
Hmm.
relevant to me like an hour ago is not the same thing that's relevant to me right now when I just like got that next Starbucks coffee and my rent's going to be due in a couple days and so on and so forth. So the ability to
Right.
take all of the financial information that's out there and hyper personalize it to an individual so that they don't need to
Hmm.
go spend time trying to do that learning, but really can just get the information that they need at the touch of a hand. That's really the key, as well as the personalization of the way in which generative AI communicates and the way that it can
Hmm.
tailor its communications to individuals, right? So some people like to have something, at length, even though it's specific to their finances, they might want a very long, detailed explanation, and they may want it to have very formal language in the way that it converses with you, and that's what they find understandable. Some people want it to talk a little bit more like them, right? To have the nuances of the whatever region. We're a big country out here in the US, and everybody's got different little sort of ways in which they communicate in different words that we use. So really getting to that level of the hyper personalization of the data and the hyper personalization of the actual experience of communicating with the tools and navigating the tools, that's really what's making the biggest difference.
Yeah. Very great point. So I want to dig a little deeper. What tools have you noticed with AI money management specifically?
Yeah, well, at OneUnited Bank, we offer a tool called Wise One, and it's actually a
Hmm.
full suite of financial literacy tools. But the key is really those data aggregation tools, the artificial intelligence insights, and then the Wise One conversational agent that can have the discussions with you. So that's really what we're hyper focused on at the moment, and we believe that that's the full next generation. And that conversational banking tool is really not something that sort of exists out there within the market. There are those money management tools, but one of as they're wonderful, we talked about some of the challenges. One of the other challenges that exists with them is they're typically offered by fintechs. Fintechs are great because they really can move a lot faster than banks, often when it comes to adopting new technology, which is wonderful, and they can lead the cutting edge. So we need them. They're absolutely essential to sort of our moving forward as a society.
Right.
But some of the challenges is that they're really not regulated in any way, shape, or
Hmm.
form. And
Right.
so when
Right.
you're dealing with somebody who has control of your money, it's a bit tenuous about what level of data access you want to give them and what their responsibilities are to you if
Hmm.
something happens with your financial data. So that's
Right.
one of the things that we're seeing is that traditional banks are starting to think about catching up into that
Hmm.
space. And then the fintechs who are leading that space and operating in a really wonderful way. But there are occasional times where they run into trouble and they don't necessarily customers who end up bearing the burden of those lack of financial controls. So that's what we're really seeing is the traditional banks starting to think about that catching up and getting comfortable with artificial intelligence, and the fintechs continuing to move everybody forward.
Right. And I was curious. So you talked a little bit about some of the tools that One United is using. Could you give an example of how my customer might use one of those tools?
Absolutely. So the idea would be you've got your sort of probably checking and savings account with one particular financial institution. You've
Hmm.
got your mortgage, your auto loan, all of those pieces of financial data in disparate places. We offer a data aggregation tool that can bring them together and help to organize sort of your assets, your liabilities, what the case may be. So just immediately, you have one single place where you can go to understand your finances. A really key piece there is take credit cards, right? If you've got the average American, I think, has upwards of 3 credit cards. Some people have, you know, scary situations, 19, 20 different cards, right? If you want to, just as a simple matter, be able to just know, okay, how much do I owe on all my cards, right? often you've got to remember 5 different passwords and multi-factor
Hmm.
authentication, and then you've got to know how to navigate each individual platform to go see what's my interest rate, you know, this month. And those, by the way, can fluctuate on a monthly or even more frequent basis. So what's my current
Right.
interest rate? When is the next due date? Exactly how much do I owe? And when will it be paid off if I just pay the minimums? That type of information is going to be placed in a different place on every single platform. So the concept is we'll take all of that financial data, we'll put it in one organized fashion for you across all of your different accounts, so you can immediately see this is what you owe. These are the dates in which they're due, and and then we go a step further to saying this is the best strategy for paying off that debt. So there's a really sad story about someone who they were in sort of a tough financial situation, and they went to their parents for support. And their parents were wonderful, and they were able to provide that person with $15,000 to help them to pay off their debt. Right? That's a wonderful gift. I would love for somebody to just hand me 15,000, right? So that's wonderful, and that should be able to make a substantial impact in sort of any person's finances. But what this individual didn't understand was the correct debt payoff strategy for them. And they, instead of sort of taking that and paying off the account that was going to cause them the most trouble, right, in order to be able to close some of their financial accounts out and stop accruing the debt, instead what they did is they sort of sprinkled the payments across all of their different cards. So nothing ended up being fully paid off. They still continued to accumulate
Mm.
interest across all of those cards. No accounts were closed. And just
Right.
within a couple of months, they were back in the exact same situation that they had been in
Mm.
previously. Right.
Right.
So, really helping people to understand how to manage their finances is a key aspect of it, because what we often see is that for many Americans, it's not that they actually don't have enough funds available, right? But it's about the lack
Mm.
of visibility and the lack of understanding about how to manage them. So, a really common thing is, well,
Hmm.
you get paid on a Friday, you go out, you have a great time, you're enjoying your weekend, and then you forgot that
Right.
Monday you actually have the rent bill is due and the grocery bill is due and
Yep.
the
All
light
of the
bill
bills
is due.
do.
Yeah, so something that's helpful is uh, you know those reminders immediately when you get that payment that this is the upcoming bills that you have due, and this is where we expect you to land at the end of the month after you've covered your responsibilities, and letting people have that information up front. This is what you have to play with, not the full amount. No, this is what you have left after your bills. So those are some examples. The energy one is a really common one. Hey, go ahead and check on your bills. Duplicate bills are another really common one. We see that as a very common issue with sort of with everybody, but particularly with high net worth folks and with families, right? So a common scenario will be that the kids get a hold of the dad's credit card bill and they subscribe for Netflix, and all of a sudden a family of four is paying for 4 different Netflix accounts is a really common scenario. And unless they, but maybe they had they had one credit card for themselves and then one credit card that the kids have been given access to, and they've got to match up all those accounts and bills and their different billing cycles to be able to actually tell how many times a month am I actually being charged for this. So those are some really common scenarios of challenges that every single consumer, every single American family faces, and all of that can really be handled really quickly and efficiently with artificial intelligence, just providing you with a very simple, bite-sized, actionable insight about what is the next best step to take and how to make better financial decisions.
Right. I really appreciate you kind of going over the very practical ways it can help people out. But I wanted to end on a note about how can banks maintain that personal touch while using AI, to having that human assistant who's available so they don't feel sometimes like they're just being abandoned or just left to talk to the AI agent.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely critical. OneUnited Bank, we offer a United States-based customer service operation, so people that our customers are very comfortable speaking with, and that's sort of one of the biggest sort of compliments that we get from our customers is that they love that whenever they love that they can do everything digitally and everything completely functions digitally, so they don't have to speak to us, but that when they need to, we're available for them. And it's not just about sort of there's a customer service center and what we call our customer care center where you can call in and ask questions, but we take it even a step further than that, and we also actually have a customer success team, and that's a group of individuals who actually proactively reach out to our customer base when it seems like they may be stuck or they may be having a difficult situation, right? So we analyze data, and based on what we see, we'll give our customers a call periodically and say, hey, did you have any questions? We noticed these things happening in your account. Do you need any additional guidance? Do you need any additional support? So, really providing that proactive care, because for most people, if you run into an issue, especially if you run into an issue when it comes to using any type of artificial intelligence, you might just, kind of say, hey, I'm going to move on to the next thing with my day, right? I don't really have
Right.
time to go in and try to troubleshoot and et cetera, et cetera. So really being able to reach out to the customers and offer that helping hand, people really appreciate the proactive approach. But I would just in general say that any artificial intelligence tool works best when it's coupled with that human touch that's available when people need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today, Erin. Is there any thoughts you'd like to leave our audience before we sign off today?
No, I'm really grateful for you taking the time here, Brad. I hope that everybody gets the opportunity to get access to the tools that they need to help them to better manage their
Mhm.
finances and make better financial decisions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erin. Loved having you on today. And thank you to our listeners as well.